Stephen Su was a Chinese national who operated a small aviation company in Canada. Despite being a small company, Stephen worked tirelessly to establish connections with American and Canadian firms, which gave him an extensive network of business contacts. But someone was noticing his hard work: the FBI. The people working with Stephen had no idea that the man they were dealing with would have been involved in such a large conspiracy, because neither was he Stephen Su, nor was he just a businessman. His real name was Su Bin, and he was on a nasty mission. In 2014, a criminal complaint was filed against him in Los Angeles. In July of 2014, Su was arrested in Canada on a warrant issued in relation to this case, and was later extradited to the US in 2016, where 51-year-old Su finally admitted that he was part of a conspiracy against the US. But the shocking part was in the details, the way this conspiracy was being carried out. And when Su started spilling the beans, it shook the entire nation. As an entrepreneur, the reason he was working so hard to establish connections within Canada and American firms was not because he wanted to expand his business, but rather to assist the people he was working for, the ones operating behind the scenes. The connections Su was making weren't with random firms, but with top defense contractors in the US and Canada, who produce some of the most sophisticated weapons systems on the planet. He even drew the attention of the business community through an article in the Wall Street Journal on his business model, products, and contacts within the industry. By 2013, Su had also established connections with GE Aviation in Cincinnati, a firm well known for its advanced turbofan technologies. And just remember that name for now. I'll soon explain why it's important. Remember, we're going to expose some very powerful forces, and they might suppress this video, but you can help us prevent this by tapping on that like button below. Thank you. But the question is, why was Su so eager to establish connections with the top defense firms? This is because Su's job was to inform his co-conspirators about whom to target, which files to steal, and why the information they stole was significant. On top of that, he even translated the stolen information into Chinese, and even drafted formal reports on the material they managed to steal. He admitted that from October of 2008 to March of 2014, he conspired with 2 hackers to gain unauthorized access to protected computer networks in the United States, including the ones belonging to the Boeing Company, California, to obtain sensitive military information. He revealed that they stole 630,000 files from Boeing, which is a massive 65 gigabytes of data related to the C-17 heavy-lift cargo aircraft, using the information he had gained through his business contacts. The C-17 Globemaster is the US Air Force's primary transport aircraft. But Su and his hacker friends had their eyes set on an even bigger target: the most sophisticated fighter jets on the planet. They were now targeting Lockheed Martin's F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning II, the best fighter jets produced to date. For at least 6 years, Su and his team of hackers accessed tens of thousands of files related to the stealth fighter programs. And the reason it took 6 long years for US intelligence to catch Su Bin was because he and his partners were extremely smart, and they knew how to outsmart the authorities. Su and his partners not only put in a lot of effort to steal the information, but they also worked equally hard to hide their tracks. And for this, they employed a tactic known as hop points. These are compromised or purchased networks in various third-party countries that mask the true origin of the infiltration. For example, a hacker in China might use a server in Brazil as a hop point, making it appear as though the cyber attack originated in Brazil rather than China. This tactic helped them hide their true location and hence evade detection. This is why FBI counterintelligence experts had to trace their activities through multiple nations to identify the actual source. And after a lot of hard work, he was finally caught. During the investigation, in a 2011 email presented as evidence, Su bragged to his associates that the information they had stolen from the F-22 and F-35 programs would allow us to rapidly catch up with US levels, to stand easily on the giant's shoulders. But what exactly was he referring to? And who was the mastermind behind this conspiracy? Let's address something that's been on my mind before we move forward. After watching my videos or other YouTubers' videos, I'm sure some of you guys have thought about starting your own channel. One of the biggest hurdles people face when starting a YouTube channel is that they are not comfortable showing their face in videos. Not everyone wants to give up their privacy and be in the public eye all the time. That's one of the big reasons why our videos are made in a documentary style. The craziest part is, people still love the videos, as you can see from the fact that we recently crossed 1 million subscribers. In fact, there are millions of faceless YouTube channels making content and earning ad revenue. In just the last 3 years, YouTube has paid out $70 billion to creators. That's around $60 million every single day. So if you're someone who's interested in starting a YouTube channel, right now is the perfect time. That's why we've launched a completely free 7-day email crash course on how to start and grow a faceless YouTube channel. If that's something you're interested in, you can sign up now for free by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on the screen. All right, now let's get back to the topic at hand. When I started digging deeper into similar missions, I came across a report by the American cybersecurity firm Mandiant Solutions. Since 2004, Mandiant has investigated several computer security breaches at hundreds of organizations around the world. Mandiant successfully tracked many hacker groups and even identified one that was the most active and successful. They named it APT-1. For now, just remember this name. We'll explain what it means shortly. But what surprised me was the location of the hackers. In fact, the location Mandiant traced it back to was most likely the same place where Subin's conspirators were operating from. The images of the building, known as Unit 61398, looked something like this. The Mandiant team even mentioned the address of the building, which was Unit 61398, Datong Road 208, Pudong, New Area, Shanghai. And you know where Shanghai is, in the People's Republic of China. But the details they uncovered and who they were working for left them shocked. Because they weren't just random hackers doing it for money. They were operating in a highly organized manner. In fact, based on the size of Unit 61398's physical infrastructure, Mandiant estimated that the unit is staffed by hundreds and perhaps thousands of people. So, just to give you some context, the building you just saw is estimated to have offices for about 2,000 people. The scary part is this is only one of the unit's several buildings, and some of them are even larger. Turns out that the people in these buildings were working for a segment of the Chinese military called the People's Liberation Army General Staff Department's 3rd Department, 2nd Bureau, otherwise known as Unit 61398. Several hundreds of people who worked there were responsible for several things that included military reconnaissance, electronic warfare, and even writing propaganda comments on social media. In fact, all this was being executed in such an organized manner that there were university-recommended courses for students willing to apply for positions in Unit 61398, and even job listings for hacking roles in this unit. The former employees even included the hacking achievements in their CVs, and one hacker even published a scientific paper on his hacking techniques. As I mentioned, APT-1 wasn't the only group that was involved in hacking. There are, or at least were, more than 20 APT groups originating from China, with APT-1 being one of them. Now, this might surprise you, but these groups have played a critical role in making China a superpower. But you may ask, what exactly is APT, and how did they make China a superpower? An APT, or Advanced Persistent Threat, is a cyber attack where the attacker gains and maintains long-term, unauthorized access to a computer network without being detected. And the primary purpose of these hackers is to mine highly sensitive data. But for what?
The first public appearance of its latest stealth fighter. The Chengdu J-20 was the star of the show. China's touting the new aircraft as being undetectable by radar and a competitor to the U.S. Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor.
In March 2014, China unveiled its 5th-generation fighter aircraft, the J-20. This initially looked like just a normal event, but when pictures of the new J-20 first surfaced on the internet, they raised eyebrows among anyone with even a basic knowledge of modern defense equipment. Its looks, design, and features shocked the entire world, especially the US. Maybe some US officials even anticipated it. And if you haven't heard of the J-20, here's what it looks like. And this is what the world's most advanced fighters, the F-22 and the F-35, look like. Can you spot the difference between them? I don't think there are that many differences. They both look exactly the same. This might be a coincidence, but when so many coincidences occur and the timelines of multiple events overlap, it's hard to believe this was all just a coincidence. Don't believe me? We'll have a look. In 2008, China began developing its first stealth fighter under Project 718, with the primary goal of competing with Western jets. The development contract was awarded to Chengdu Aerospace Corporation. But surprisingly, 2008 was the same year in which Su began working with the two hackers employed by the Chinese People's Liberation Army. Later, in 2009, 6 current and former government officials even confirmed that the Joint Strike Fighter program that produced the F-35 had been accessed multiple times by unknown hackers. They managed to secure several terabytes of information regarding the aircraft's design and systems. In fact, Pentagon officials mentioned that the hackers were so expert that they used a method that encrypted the data as they were stealing it, which made it very difficult to evaluate what exactly had been stolen. And this was just the beginning. After this espionage attack, things started taking a weird turn in 2011, when the J-20 fighter design that was under development since 2008 suddenly adopted several significant and stealthy changes. By the way, if you remember, this was the same year when Su sent that email to his Chinese contacts, mentioning that the information they stole from the F-22 and F-35 programs would allow them to rapidly catch up with the US levels and stand easily on the giant's shoulders. A year later, a fighter jet similar to that of the F-35, which China named the Shenyang J-31, took its first flight in 2012. By 2013, Su had also established connections with GE Aviation, the same company we mentioned in the beginning and I asked you to remember. Because this was the same company who was competing against Pratt & Whitney to provide its advanced engines to the F-22 and F-35 fighter jets. Although both the F-22 and F-35 are powered by Pratt & Whitney's, it's worth noting that GE's proposal for the F-22 Raptor engine was actually a more advanced and capable design than Pratt & Whitney's. It's just that Pratt & Whitney's YF-119 engine was chosen because of its simplicity and its more mature and proven technology. Finally, 2014, as we saw China's new and improved J-20 design finally emerged. This was the same year when Su Bin was caught and he pretty much succeeded in his job. China might claim that the similarities between the J-20, Shenyang J-31, and the US F-22 and F-35 jets are just coincidences, but now you know the story behind these so-called coincidences. But something was missing. Even after so many coincidences and allegations leveled at China, the US military denied everything for a very long period of time. Until January of 2015. Because this was when documents leaked by Edward Snowden became the first public confirmation that the F-35 was stolen by the Chinese. And they stole the world's most advanced fighter jet, the US-made F-35 and F-22, not by a daring maverick or by an undercover agent, but by sending a few emails to Lockheed Martin employees pretending to be their co-worker. According to sources, this data breach already took place in 2007. Another document leaked by WikiLeaks exposed details about Byzantine Hades, the name US investigators gave the attackers they traced back to China. To be more specific, traced back to a unit of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. The same report mentions about 30,000 hacking incidents, which includes 500 major breaches in Department of Defense systems, compromise of more than 600,000 user accounts, over 300,000 user ID passwords, and even records of 33,000 US Air Force officers were compromised. The total data extracted from all these hacking incidences was nearly 50 terabytes. The overall damage was estimated to be more than $100 million. Later in 2016, we saw even more public confirmations, one of which was Su Bin admitting involvement in a conspiracy. But even after so many conspiracies, the CCP could never replicate these jets or even other technologies exactly as they are. And this is because of a very simple reason. Before you understand this reason, you must know what made these technologies vulnerable to hackers. If you consider the case of the F-22 and the F-35, these aircraft weren't built or developed entirely by Lockheed Martin alone. Both of these fighters are the result of collaboration among many contractors and subcontractors, with design details shared across different companies to ensure smooth manufacturing. So it was easy to target just one of the contractors and get access to the design. However, most of the confidential systems developed for the aircraft are kept isolated from broader network access to prevent security breaches. So accessing them is almost impossible. This is why, even though their jets look very similar to US ones, they have a lot of differences in their performance parameters. And on the majority of the parameters, the original technology turns out to be far superior to the copied Chinese weapons. Anyway, this allowed the Chinese military to reverse engineer various aircraft components, which would otherwise have cost millions of dollars to develop from scratch. This approach saved not only money, but also a significant amount of time in research and development. In fact, it's not just the US that's on China's radar. China steals technology from any country that could benefit it. And I mean any country, including its closest allies. If you've seen our previous video on how China cunningly replicates weapon technology, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But didn't I say that China became a superpower using this method? You might be wondering how stealing just military technology could have made China a superpower. While it's a crucial part of becoming a superpower, it's not the only factor, right? What you're thinking is completely right. But did I say that China was only targeting defense secrets? Absolutely not. Because whatever I mentioned about the Chinese hacking was just the tip of the iceberg. The dark secrets I discovered apart from the defense hacking is worrisome for literally every one of us. In fact, a former senior official at McAfee said the scariest line. He said, "I divide the entire set of Fortune Global 2000 firms into two categories. Those that know they've been compromised and those that don't know it yet." You will understand the depth of this line as we move forward. I mentioned earlier that everything these hackers do is in an extremely organized way. Everything is planned, communicated, and executed properly. And I mean so systematically that even the government is involved in this. In fact, there is a way you can predict what companies and sectors could be their next targets. This is by reading their 5-year plan. These plans are a series of social and economic development initiatives issued by the CCP. In fact, according to Mandiant, the industries APT-1 targeted match the industries that China has identified as strategic to their growth, including 4 of the 7 strategic emerging industries that China identified in its 12th 5-year plan. Basically, China lists everything it wants to achieve or improve in its 5-year plans. One such thing that China wanted to achieve was mentioned in their 13th 5-year plan. This plan included everything China wanted to achieve from 2016 to 2020, including the development of necessary infrastructure, factories, and systems in China to mass-produce their own large and regional passenger planes. This is because China saw a huge opportunity in the large commercial plane market. Airbus and Boeing combined control 99% of this market. So China decided to develop such planes indigenously, sell them for cheap, and capture a chunk of this market. They even made an impressive start when its state-owned aerospace company, Comac, built the first prototype in 2015. They named it Comac C919. But, as always, it came with that typical Chinese charm. And no, I'm not talking about Winnie the Pooh. I'm talking about flaws that come with every Chinese technology. Because of the delays due to design flaws, this plane took 2 long years just to complete its first maiden flight in 2017. Anyways, it was a great deal because Comac became one of the select companies that had the ability to manufacture large commercial planes, and that too, roughly at half the cost of its competitors. This aircraft seemed like a great achievement, but the reality was far different. Actually, Comac procured 60% of the C919's parts from US aerospace companies. Basically, Comac received collaboration from US companies. But sources claim that something was fishy and more than just collaboration. This is because in a 2019 report, a cybersecurity technology company, CrowdStrike, accused the Chinese government of stealing technology through spying. In fact, a Chinese intelligence officer was even trying to steal one of the most sensitive pieces of information. Actually, this was the most satisfying thing I've read. No, I'm not talking about the espionage, but rather how the spy was caught by the FBI. And trust me, it was no less thrilling than a Hollywood movie. Xu Yanjun, a Chinese intelligence officer, was trying to steal information from GE Aviation. Actually, this was one of the companies that provided engines to Airbus and Boeing aircrafts. He was trying to steal GE Aviation's exclusive composite aircraft engine fan module. This technology is so complex that no other company in the world has been able to replicate it. Xu tries to set a trap. He has his eyes set on a GE Aviation employee. In March 2017, Xu invited this person to give a talk at a Chinese university. The employee accepts and travels to China in May. Upon arrival, he meets Xu, who covers all his travel expenses. These were likely some trust-building activities. The employee delivers his presentation and returns home. But he had no idea about the real intentions of Xu. In January of 2018, Xu asked the employee for some sensitive information. And because there was already so much trust between them, the employee emailed a 2-page document from the company that was marked as confidential. Xu wanted more. So he suggested meeting the employee in Europe and asked for more company files. Surprisingly, the employee agreed, and Xu traveled to Belgium in April of 2018 to meet with him. He also brought some cash for their meeting. But to his surprise, he was arrested by authorities when he arrived. He had no idea how he got exposed. In reality, Xu had no clue that the FBI had taken control of the situation long before he could even suspect it. Actually, after the employee returned from China, the FBI took over the communication, and it was the FBI who was pretending to be the employee. Every conversation Xu thought he was having with the employee was actually with the FBI. In fact, sending the confidential information via email was also part of the FBI's trap. Finally, he was extradited to the United States, where he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The prosecutors even stated that the 2 state-owned companies involved in the C919's developments received technical information from Xu. But do you know that China has a no-discrimination policy? It believes in unity in diversity. This is why it doesn't discriminate between defense industries, high-tech industries, real estate, oil and natural gas pipeline operators, government agencies, etc. It steals everything it can get, from multiple organizations, multiple countries, and almost every sector you can imagine. In fact, the Chinese hackers even targeted the International Olympic Committee and the World Anti-Doping Agency around the 2008 Beijing Olympics. A report identified 9 APT groups responsible for some of the largest hacking operations from 2006 to 2015. Not surprisingly, all of them originated from the same country, China. One of the earliest operations that shocked everyone was Operation Shady Rat, where RAT stands for Remote Access Tool. McAfee, the organization that investigated this operation, identified a command and control server used by the intruders. By monitoring the server, they tracked the activities of the hackers from 2006 to 2011, identifying numerous victim organizations. When McAfee finally published their report, it shocked the world. The hackers targeted 71 institutions across 14 different countries. The main objective of the attackers in Operation Shady Rat was to infiltrate systems, gain unauthorized access, and then maintain that access over an extended period of time. This allowed them to continuously extract sensitive data and monitor the activities of the victim organizations without detection. Yeah, you heard that right. The scariest part was the victims were not even aware that they'd been hacked, and the hackers were stealing sensitive data from their systems. The shortest time that an organization remained compromised was less than a single month, and the longest McAfee reported was about 28 months. But the scariest one was the one Mandiant reported, because even they were tracking a hacker group named APT-1 they tracked from 2006 to 2013. They found that APT-1 hacked 141 companies over 20 major industries. The most shocking part is that APT-1 managed to maintain access to one of the victims' networks for a whopping 1,764 days, or about 4 years and 10 months. I mean, can you imagine? Your computer has been hacked, and for the past 5 years, hackers have been extracting all your sensitive data without you even knowing it. Seems pretty scary, right? Once they gain access, the hackers periodically revisit the victim's network over several months or years, stealing a wide range of intellectual property, including technology blueprints, proprietary manufacturing processes, test results, business plans, pricing documents, partnership agreements, and emails and contact lists from the organization's leadership. Mandiant reported that APT-1 stole hundreds of terabytes of data from 2006 to 2013. The Mandiant report believes that the stolen information was used to benefit the PRC and Chinese state-owned enterprises. For example, in 2008, APT-1 breached the network of a company in the wholesale industry. Over the next 2.5 years, APT-1 stole an unknown number of files from the victim and repeatedly accessed the email accounts of several executives, including the CEO and general counsel. Surprisingly, during the same period, major news organizations reported that China successfully negotiated a double-digit price reduction per unit with the victim organization for one of its major commodities. While this might be purely coincidental, the timing suggests that the stolen data likely played a significant role in that negotiation. Operations like Shady Rat and similar ones proved extremely beneficial for China. They helped China acquire important trade secrets, which contributed to its rise as a major global power. But what exactly did the hackers do to break the systems? The hackers used a very simple method to hack into systems, something even you might have experienced. The hackers pose as a coworker and send an email with a malicious link or attachment to the person they are targeting. If the attachment is opened, it installs malicious software into the system. The hackers then take control of the infected computer and steal the important data they were targeting. In the earlier years, the Chinese hackers didn't worry about being tracked and didn't take much effort to hide their origin. As a result, it was easier to trace them back to their origin. But as the years passed, the hackers became more careful and made more efforts to make sure that they weren't traced back easily. Even the motive of the attacks changed with time. Initially, the hackers aimed to target as many victims as possible and steal as much information as they could. Over time, their goal shifted to maintaining access for as long as possible, ensuring they could retrieve information whenever needed. Lastly, just remember to verify any link or attachment you click on. Who knows? You might be the next target.